back to the Beyond the Home Study podcast. We are so happy to have you here. We are here with part two of an episode that we actually started last week. So if you missed last week, definitely jump back, listen to part one. So many good points, great conversation that we had. So we are going to pick back up now with Amie Huggins, who is an educator. She's been in the classroom for 30 years. She's a TBRI practitioner too. And Marti Smith, who is an OT and a TBRI practitioner as well. And I know you're all going to benefit so much from this conversation. So let's jump back in. I would love to hear from both of you. So what are some things you see, and how does that very, very early trauma within days, or even, in my case, maybe
Just in utero.
even in utero, how does that translate then to what behavior looks like in the classroom?
Yeah, I'll start this one, Amy, and you can bring this home. But I'll start with a little bit of the neurology and the neurosequential model of therapeutics, the NMT that Dr. Perry does a lot of training. We learn a lot about development and how the brain develops, when it develops, and how that impacts later. And when the trauma happens, really impacts the capacities of and the affordances of the person later in life. And so we think about the first 2 months of life are the most valuable in regards to later behavior. And there are studies that Dr. Perry cites, and I think you might have even been involved in, where if you have an infant who is in a chaotic environment where their needs are not met, where they are not, they cry and no one comes, right? Or they cry and someone hits them or damage, gets physical, or if there's something that their basic needs are not met in those first 2 months, that's when the attachment cycle is being developed. That's when your trust networks are being developed. All of those regulatory structures that I talked about, like regulation is being able to interpret and process the senses that are coming in and then integrate them into a functional outcome, right? Those structures and those networks are being formed in those first 2 months and in utero. So if you have a mother who is in chaos and does not get prenatal care and then comes out into a violent home, those networks, they develop differently. And so those kids develop to be very protective. They develop to either not even cry anymore, so their needs don't get expressed so that people can't meet them later, which reinforces no one's going to meet my need, right? Or they have to get really loud to get seen, especially if you're a lot of the kids that I work with, they come from homes where there's substance abuse, and so they were neglected. And so these kids had to get real loud. And then when they got finally loud enough, the parent would wake up and then go care for them. So they come in, and I call them my jumping beans, right? They cannot sit still. They're bouncing off the walls because their brain was wired in those regulatory networks in those first 2 months. And so the study that I was referring to is, if we look at the outcomes of these kids, if your trauma happened in the first 2 months or in utero, your long term prognosis of being able to hold a job, not have chronic illness, and have the capacity to like think straight, if you will, is much less than a kid who had a loving, nurturing home for the first 2 months, but then went into mass chaos for like a year. So you can have prolonged chaos later in life and actually have better outcomes than if you had just a very brief. And so that's why I'm such an advocate for like prenatal care. Keep those mamas calm, in that first 2 months. Don't send them home right away. Like, make sure that they have the care that they need for that first 2 months, and keep people in your community. That's why we do meal trains, and that's why we do these things, is we really need to be checking in on these moms and making sure that that first 2 months is as optimal as it can be. And so when you don't have that, then I'll let Amie kind of speak to what happens in the classroom. Well, when you have these kids that did not form those attachments, and they did not form those regulatory structures and pathways and things that help them navigate the world.
Right.
What does that look like?
I let me I think it's easiest with a story. So, our brains love stories anyway, but I worked with a kid, or knew of a kid that had moved schools, and the school that the child came from was play-based, and that's a whole nother conversation, right? Like, That's its own world. But the school that they had come from was play based. And so this child went into this new school and didn't know how to behave in a class that wanted them to sit still because everything had been interactive, everything had been playful, which is ironically for kids who are younger, the number one means of learning. So we were taking this child and taking them out of something that was biologically, developmentally appropriate, putting them into a situation where the expectations were not really clear because they hadn't grown up there. Right. And then when the child would throw chairs or when they would get upset and rip things off of walls, the teacher and the administration was like, this kid's violent. We have to, what are we going to do with this kid? And I'll never forget that the parent went to get the kid one day when they had been um told they had to go home, and they go to pick up the kid, and the parent and I were talking. We had been talking frequently, and I said, the next time this happens, is it possible for you to at least have this little one have some interaction with the previous school? And so the parent made arrangements for this child to, I think they probably did a Zoom call, to go in and connect back to this original classroom. And as the parent and the child were leaving the school was like, so what's the punishment? Right? Like they thought they were being funny. Like, what are you going to do to this kid? And the parent just looked at him and said, well, we're going to go back and connect in with their people. And the parent was floored when the response from everybody in the office was, well, why are you going to do that? You're just reinforcing the negative behaviors. And my response, and the parent was like, I don't know really what to say to that. Like she understood it, but she was struggling with, how do I communicate that? And so my response to her was, you're not giving them what you're not reinforcing negative behaviors. You're giving them what they need. This child had been in this school for a really long time, had connections, had relationships, and then had been pulled from it and had been put in a position that was nothing like they were familiar with. So yeah, fight, flight, or freeze is what you've got. So when you start looking at these kids in schools who are throwing desks, and I mean, we say that all the time as a joke, but it happens all the time,
Mhm.
right? Hitting other kids, hitting teachers, um, destroying property, all of that. In more almost every case. In fact, I would probably say every case, but there's something underneath that we need to address. So what's causing you not to feel safe? So we need to reframe. And unfortunately for us, schools is so based in behavioralism. It's so based in, if you get a gold star, we'll give you a candy at the end of the class. And for our kids who have these attachment issues and struggle with the arousal continuum and how to regulate that, that star means nothing, right? If you think about the star charts, most of our kids who have the star charts respond a couple of ways. Either one, I'm not even going to try because I'm going to epically fail, or I'm going to do my best today. And as soon as that first star, that first negative hits, they shut down or they get violent, right? Because what we're doing in that is we're not teaching. Schools' jobs are to teach. It's literally called education. Teach us, right? And so we need to be teaching these kids how it's appropriate. But to do that, we have to understand what they're communicating to us, which means we need to do better teacher training. We need to do better with helping teachers understand what they're looking at so that when they look at this little one who's throwing a chair across the room or ripping something off the wall, what they're really seeing is, I feel unsafe. I feel not connected. And so how can
I
I
don't know what
help?
to do. Yeah,
Right. I don't
I don't know
do.
what to
Mhm.
do.
I'm communicating to you the only way I know how, because you didn't listen to my words, even though they're young and didn't have good words. You didn't listen to my early behaviors. You didn't, you're not, I don't know how to get to you. So I'm just getting louder and louder and louder, which is honestly a very human response. Think about that. Like when you're having a relationship issue or a fight with your significant other or something like that, when you feel like your needs aren't being met, what do? You shut down, right? Or you get louder. So our kids are just doing exactly what we do, but we are holding them to a standard that isn't fair because I'm an adult. I can now, after years of therapy, can look at my body and say, oh, I'm starting to get myself worked up. In fact, this happened yesterday. I was starting to feel myself walk through the hall really fast and I was steps were getting harder. And I'm like, I'm, because it had been
Give that proprioceptive input with my feet.
I'm literally running up the stairs like this, and it reminded me of like the what was it, Wizard of Oz, do, right? Hall, and I catch myself because we've been writing this book with Marty, and so like I'm living in this world, right? So I'm a little bit more connected to it than I usually am, and as I'm doing up the stairs, I went, oh my gosh, I am hitting a hyper aroused state. I have got to calm myself down. So as I came up the stairs, I literally talked myself into taking a breath, right? Slowing my walk down. And by the time I was on my way to lunch, and by the time I got to lunch, I was no longer ready to tell everybody how bad this kid had been in my class. And I was ready to sit down and just have a conversation. I'm 51 years old. It took me till I was 51 years old to figure out how to do this skill, right? So imagine if we have teachers who can learn how to do it for themselves, and then we can help kids do it, right? Like frequently the kids who are having the most struggle end up in my classroom. It's not by accident, right? Because I'm not going to put a sticker chart in front of them. I'm not going to give them the punitive things. I'm not going to yell and scream. We're just going to sit and have a conversation and redo it till we get it right. Um, and so I think it's very possible, like it's so possible to do this. We just need to give teachers and schools the education to understand what's happening and then the tools to handle it.
Yeah, I love what you guys are, talking about in all the different ways that, this, even early trauma and how it affects, just like it just keeps going, if we don't have this foundation that we're building, by getting help and attachment and, all these things that we need early, how they play out. And Amy, I'd really love to go ahead and just switch gears here and really dive into some of these school issues, really. Can you guys tell us, you mentioned sticker charts and we see this, it's like, I don't even know what to say when parents come to me and say, like, oh, well, we did a sticker chart. And I'm like, okay. So can you just start there and tell me what's the deal with sticker charts? And then we can kind of dive more into like schools and really what's going on.
Wish I could tell you what the thing with sticker charts is. I don't get it. I hate it. And yet it is always the go-to. I sit in IEPs and 504s and I have all of these parents who are like, well, let's just give them a sticker chart and they can earn a bag of Takis. And I'm like, congratulations. Takis are going to solve the world's problems, right?
Obviously.
I think there's a place in our book where Marty and I talk about how those little clip charts they have, they're in the
Yeah.
garbage.
And I think it's like, what should we do? Because we have dialogue in our book that goes back and forth between us. And I think I don't know, somebody is like, what do we do with these clip charts? And our response is put them in the trash. Like just throw them away. Like they're
So
so
explain to our listeners. I guarantee we have a lot of listeners that are like, "Wait a minute, I have a chart. What's wrong? I didn't even know this was an issue." So tell them, like, what's going on with the sticker charts?
So I don't even know what to start. This is such a big thing for me. Um, sticker behavioralism is a theory, and Marty, you're the expert here, so you've got to step in if I get it wrong. But the behavioralism is this idea that has come out really of old research, right? This idea of positive and negative reinforcement. If I get enough positive reinforcements, I will get the behavior change that I want. And it's really can be effective when you're training a dog, right? Our kids are not dogs. Our kids come with these full sets of emotions, and there are not many adults. And that's another thing I think our students gets wrong. Go ahead.
if I could interject too, you've hit on a couple things. One, I will say sticker charts can be effective for a child who is connected, feels safe, knows what to do, and is regulated. They work really well when you are in a calm state of arousal. But as soon as you and again, I'm living Bravo Global's world, and so we talk a lot. And she talks about protection or connection. And when you're in connection mode, then you feel safe, and those four tenets are met. And you can do a sticker chart, and it's fabulous. And you're working towards something. Adults do this all the time. That's why we go to work. We go to work for stickers, right? But they just come as mail that's deposited in our bank accounts, right? But so they are effective when you're in the connected mode. But when you shift to protection mode, which means that one of those pillars is not holding its weight, you're not standing up on those pillars, then you're in protective mode, which the nervous system goes into putting the resources into either being regulated, feeling safe, connected, like all those things. So when you're in protective mode, you can't do the things that involve thinking. Your thinking brain unplugs. And so Amie was saying, you're not a dog. Well, let's think about a dog, right? Dogs, they do think and they have thoughts. And they have these doodles now that can, like, tell you what they think using, the little adaptive, the little push button things. I can't think of what they're called right now, but I used them all the time when I was in schools. But what happens is the dog actually gets put into a real submissive, when you're training a dog, a lot of times you are using these punitive techniques and things, and the dog literally shuts down. And so some dog training methods shut the dog down and they decrease the nervous system. And what they're really doing is going into that collapsed state of being where they still can't think, but they're just on this monotonous route. And so when a kid doesn't feel connected and they're moving into protection mode, those sticker charts can still be somewhat effective. And that's why we see teachers do say, well, I did get results. Well, yeah, because the kid completely shut down. They moved so far into protection and disconnected mode that they don't have a relationship with you. They're not connecting to your content. They're not connecting to the material. Their grades aren't getting any better. The behavior might be getting better because they are so shut down that they're just not giving anything. And we know this. It's called dissociation. If you want to get into like the actual physiology of it and stuff, which we don't have time for now. But I think that that's, when Amy's like, we do it with dogs. And it's like, yeah, because we're teaching dogs to dissociate. And that's what we do with dogs is we're like, don't pay attention to that squirrel, pay attention to this clicker. We're dissociating from these things. So what are they dissociating from in your classroom in order to do that sticker chart? They're dissociating from your content. And so they're not listening to your lesson because they have dissociated so that they can earn that sticker or so that their clip does not get moved into the punitive area. So from a neurological standpoint, that's why these reward charts and things like that, they are putting someone into a very submissive, disconnected, dissociative state so that their behavior matches what we want, but you're not connected. So when we remove that threat or that punishment or whatever, the child has not learned how to be in other situations. You're not growing that human incapacity or knowledge because they can't access knowledge when they're in a protective state, which is what these charts and things do. So, Amie, I just wanted to interject that.
Please, thank you. And I think I always have teachers ask me about that because they do appear to work, right?
Yeah.
They do. And what I always tell them is it does bring short-term compliance.
Mhm.
If you want compliance, if you want kids to just fall in line and look the certain way, then these starts can be very effective for the reasons that Marti explained, right? But in classrooms, I'm a teacher. I teach social studies. I don't want my kids to dissociate. I want them to learn. And as Marti has talked about, when they are in a protective dissociative state, they cannot learn. Learning takes place in the frontal lobe. It takes place in the part of the brain that in order to function has to be connected,
And your
right?
memory networks have to be plugged in. And the memory networks are not being plugged in,
They're
when
literally in fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Mm.
And so it doesn't look like they're in fight, flight, or freeze because they're so quiet, right? But literally freeze, right? Flight, flight that can look like they're just taking a nap. I have kids who come in and they put the hoodie on their head and they lay their head down on the desk and they're like, I'm out. And teachers interpret that as, well, you're just lazy or you don't want to learn. And I look at that behavior and I'm like, oh, you're dissociated. So now the way that I need to combat that is to come up and connect to the kid. So I'll come up and I'll be like, hey, how are you? I'll high five. I'll fist bump. I'll try to get connection going. And once I can get connected to the kid, then I can address the teaching problems, right? But the old philosophy of my job as a teacher is just to teach content isn't valid when you understand the brain research, right? Which is, as much as I hate to tell this to you, and I will take a lot of flack for teachers who hear what I'm about to say. Your job is to connect to your kids first, and then it's to teach the content because the content will not be taught until they're connected.
Yeah. And I love that you even said, you gave words to it. So people know this, like, this in your heart, you're like, he puts his hoodie on and he's like, I'm out. Right? The word I'm out says I'm not connected. I am disconnecting from the content, from this room, from the environment. I'm out, right? That's dissociation. I'm out, and that's healthy. We need to do that from time to time. Like, all of these are strategies that keep us alive and keep us functioning. And, they're all good adaptive strategies. But the issue is when we don't understand where they're coming from and we think that they should be in a different state than they are, because we feel safe, like we're fine. Why aren't you fine? It's like, well, they've had a different day than you had. They had a
Yeah.
different childhood than you had. They have different capacities than you have. Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure I said I'm out to my kids the other day.
Yeah. And that's healthy. That's so healthy, right? Like, that kid, it was good that he went out instead of aggressive, right? Like, this
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a good choice, buddy, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to step out. And so that's a healthy nervous system that says, I'm out. But
Good.
then you come back. And so when you look at that, what does that look like? I'm out is I'm in protection mode and I'm not going to learn. I'm not thinking. When I say I'm out, it's not the time to be like, what do you want for dinner? I'm out. Right? You got to step back in and then you're like, oh, now I can think about dinner. These are all. And so when an adult does that, adults are doing the same things kids are doing. But for some reason, it's okay when we do it. But it's, we get to drink water all day. I have a cold right now. I have a really stuffy nose. I have vitamin C and hot coffee. Like, I'm drinking both right now to regulate my system to be on this podcast with you. But how many kids come in with a cold and they just need to drink a water? And it's like, no, you just went to the bathroom. You just had a hall pass. Like, we tell them they can't do these things. So anyway, I'm, yeah, watching our time. And
No, you're good. Amy, I was actually going to ask you, and then you kind of already started answering the question. I was thinking if we could come in and just be a fly on the wall in your classroom, how do you connect with 20 plus students? I mean, I can see you going up to individuals like fist bump, high five, different things, but what are some other practical, just like if we were observing for a day, what are some other things we would see you doing?
For starters, you would see that my room is chaos. I have a lot of teacher friends who walk by and they're like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I don't know how I do it either. But I think Marty and I have talked so much about this as we've been writing this book. Like, how do teachers do the impossible? And the honest to truthful answer is there are days I do not connect to every kid. Right? I just can't do it. And so, one of the big focuses that I have is teaching kids how to connect to each other. So I will actually teach connection strategies like this is what eye contact is. This is what, we can fist bump, healthy touch. I don't, because kids, they want to hug. They want to, right? So we can't, like Marty was telling us about earlier. So we set boundaries of you can fist bump, you can high five. I do a lot of group work. I do a lot of kids sitting at tables. There's a lot of choice in my class. Um, and again, the old school way of doing group work is you have the recorder and you have the writer and those are great. Those jobs can be very, very effective. But what's more effective is teaching kids how to listen so then they can listen to each other. So I do connection activities every day at the beginning of class. And sometimes they're as simple as tell me what you're excited about this weekend, right? But they don't tell me, they're telling each other. So I guess to answer your question, I have a couple of kids that I just kind of trust my gut on and say, this kid needs a little extra today. Sometimes I find those kids just through my own experience. Sometimes parents will email and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Can you keep an extra eye on this kid? You bet I can. Sometimes admin will come up and be like, we've got this new kid. Can you? Yep, got it. Right. Um, but more often than not, it's about creating a classroom culture where kids can connect to each other. And then I can come in and fill in on the stop gaps where I can. And we talk a lot about this, I think, in our book and about how teachers can effectively do this. But really, the connection is going to come down to have I created felt safety in my classroom? And if I have created felt safety in my classroom, then I can connect to the kids, they can connect to each other, and then we can get as many needs as possible met. Again, it's a system. We're never going to meet everybody else's needs, right? But I think it's a good step towards getting us somewhere.
Can you tell us a little bit, and then I really wanna go into your book and, why you guys even, created this book, but can you tell us from a parent perspective, if you're a parent and you've got a child that's going to school and you're seeing some of these signs and you're saying, "This is not a connected classroom," what can the parent do?
Oh, man, I don't even know how to handle it. Let's see what the answer that I should give. I think it's so hard to communicate with with schools, and I work with parents all the time who are like, "I just feel like I'm being railroaded by the schools. I don't understand these words they're talking about." Like, schools like OT are full of acronyms, right? Like, we don't know they don't know how to do it. I think with most teachers and most administration, at the end of the day, they just wanna do what's right for kids. So honesty and a little bit of vulnerability goes a long ways. Do you have just like in the human world, do you have teachers who don't get it? Yeah, right? But and at that point, when I have kids who have those teachers, I'm giving my kids survival skills, right? I'm talking to my kid about how do I handle this? And in a couple of cases, maybe I'm even giving my kid permission to dissociate a little bit from the class. Bring the homework home. We'll do it together here. Um, but I think, at least for me and my experience with most educators, is the more open and honest you can be, and please do not share the details, right? That is not anything a teacher needs to know. That is not your story to tell. That's your kid's story to tell, right? But if I get an email, in fact, I got one, I've had a few this week. We've had some things at home and I'm starting to notice the kids are stressing out a little bit more. Maybe I'm getting a little bit more acting out in class. And mom emails me and says, "We've had some issues." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then I know in class that I need to kind of pull back on the content a little bit, focus a little bit more on the connection. Um, but I also have all of this experience and training telling me how to do that, right? Most teachers don't. So that's leads right into the next part you wanted to talk about
Why
is
we
why
wrote
did
the book.
Yeah, why did you guys write this book?
that's why.
That's why. Yeah. Yeah.
Because teachers want to help. They're
They do.
inherently
They're not in it for the money. Teachers are not in it for the money. They're not in it for the status. They're not like people that think teachers are evil. It's like there's a lot of other things. You could go be a checker at HB and like make the same
more.
money and have way less stress. Like teachers do it because they love the kids and they want to make a difference and they want to nurture and they want to teach. They want to make a difference. Teachers want to make a difference. And so I know Amie is the educator, but being in the schools for 10 years, I, I I just wanted people to know like I'm on your side. And um yeah, and so when a parent would come in and, like Amy said, let me know, like, something's off, then that is communication to me, right? And then I'm not just spinning on what could this be, what could this be? Because then that decreases my ability to predict, right? So we are human and teachers wanna be able to predict as well. So when we can give them a heads up about things, that calms their nervous system so that they can be in their best self as well. And yeah, but I've not met very many educators that hate kids because they're way better careers to get into than that. But I do see educators that are burnt out. I do see educators that are exhausted and in our book we even talk about all these systems that are pushing on them like a pressure cooker. So what's happening is the teachers are feeling stressed and the teachers are moving into protection mode. So if you have a teacher that you feel like you can't connect with, that's data for you to know that their nervous system is in that protective mode as well. And so you need to give them predictability. You need to give them rhythm. You have to kind of nurture them a little bit and connect with them to bring them back into the relationship as well. And sometimes that's hard, but and Amy, you can maybe add on this, but for me, it might be like bringing in their favorite coffee. It might be like, hey, I noticed you're doing a unit on biomes because that's what we use in the book. Here's some little figurines that I bought that might fit into your lesson plan. I noticed a lot of coloring pages have been coming home. Here's some new crayons to refill your supply. Like little touches that show that one, you're paying attention to what's going on in the classroom. And it's a very specific thing, knowing what's going on. And then just finding those ways to connect with the teacher as the parent. And yeah, you can't bribe teachers. That's not legal or even ethical, but you can you can do things that say, I see you. You can notice when the teacher has a school dance. You get the middle school dance just came out. So email those teachers the next day and be like, how was the dance? Or email them the day of and be like, I hope you're busting out your moves. Like, connect with them on things that you know are relevant in their time, if you can. Because if your teacher is in protective mode and they're not listening to you and they're being very punitive, then you know they're not their best self, which means that they are not feeling safe, they're not feeling connected, they don't know what to do, and, like, those pillars are not there for them. So, I don't know, Amy, if that was
No,
accurate.
I think that's perfect. I think for education and schools to really work, teachers and parents and admin and districts have to be on the same page. We are a team. We're a connective effort. We have to stop the hostility. And in order to do that, we have to be connected. And in order to that, we have to be a little bit vulnerable and we have to be a little bit open to that. So I'll never forget, it was probably pre-COVID, but I had a student who he was well known in the school and not for all the right reasons. Right? And he and I got along so good, and I worked with a teacher that we shared an office space, and he got along really well with her, and at the end of semester 1, we were not supposed to have this child anymore, but the child and the mom had moved them into our semester 2 classes because we were working. And the mom showed up the day before school started, and she had these, and I'll call him John. She had Johnny survival bags. And she gave both of us a Johnny survival bag. And it had a thing of, I think, ibuprofen in it. It had a gift card to the local soda shop because we're in Utah, so we don't drink coffee, we drink Diet Coke. Um, it had, I think, a candy bar in it. It was just all, it maybe cost her $10, right? And in there, she wrote, "This is for you to help with my kid." And she had the kid come and bring it. And he's like, "I just thank you for not like always getting mad at me." And that has stuck with me so much. So when my kids' teachers, because I mean, I have kids, I have grandkids, when they email and they're like, can someone give something to class? You bet. What do you need? Right? Do you need me to send some Lysol wipes? Here they are. Amazon is great. You can ship it right to the school and you can write, this is for this teacher in this school. And then I don't even have to go to the store because I don't. I order everything online or pick up and I could ship it right there. The teacher has it, right? But it's not even about providing supplies. It's about just showing up and being, hey, thank you. Right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
teachers need to do the same thing. Like, this is not all on the parents. Teachers need to be back at parents and being like, "Your kid did this really well," right? "Your kid was really effective at this." And so it's just about building these connections, but I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe we don't know how to connect anymore. Our kids are lost in screens. COVID completely isolated us for so long that we are missing skills. And so that was really, I think, the motivation for a lot of what we've done in this book with Marty is how do we talk about the specific skills so you can connect, so you can problem solve? I tell teachers all the time whenever I'm working with a school, if you really, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, this kid's doing this and this kid's doing this. And what do I do about this? And they'll ask me to go in and look at this kid. And I'm like, I'm not OT. I'm not like, that's not my skill set. My job is not to go in and look at and evaluate a kid, right? That's not what I do. Um, and I finally have started saying every time I go to and they start throwing me a new kid, I'm like, well, what are you doing to connect? Where's the connection? And they're like, what do you mean? What am I doing to connect? It's all the kid. Let's make it the kid problem. And I'm like, the kid is there. Like, there's some culpability there, but you're the grown up. You're the one that's supposed to be creating felt safety as the adult. So what are you doing to connect and create felt safety? And once I think we can get education to flip that reframe a little bit, I think you're going to see game changing happen across everything. And if we can get parents and teachers, I always tell people, because I'm doing a little bit of advocacy work here in Utah, trying to get some programs established and things like that. And I always tell everybody my BHAG is to wrap every child around TBRI, big baffling behaviors, whatever the format is. If we could have kids who got connection at school, they went home and got connection. They go to church or they go to the courts or they go to wherever and all they get is connection, you would see so many of society's problems disappear. And that's where it starts.
100%.
It starts in the schools and the homes, right? So how do we get these skills to these people who are in the trenches?
Percent. which is why we wrote the book, right?
That's right. There you go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Is your mic okay now?
Okay, I had to mute myself for a second. We'll see if it works. Okay, well, thank you both so much. This has truly been wonderful. I have learned so much. I feel like my brain is expanding and I'm just soaking it all in. I'm going to go back and listen to this because I feel like there's so much more that I can learn. But let's just go ahead and end with tell everyone how can they connect with you? How can they find you? And of course, how can they find your upcoming book?
Go first. If you Google my name, I'm all over the place. I am not on social media. That's something that maybe I'll do someday, but maybe I won't. I don't know. Not a big social media presence, but I do have a website and you can reach me through there. I do private consultations. That's something that I do offer for people. They can call in and then I can do direct cases with them. And I have the book Connected Therapist is online. I have sensory healing through relationship. What is it? I have to think of the actual name of this book. Sensory Healing After Developmental Trauma is the name of that one. They're both on Amazon. And as of when this podcast is being published, then Amie and I should have our new book, The Connected Classroom, will be available either for pre-order or it may even be out by the time this airs on Amazon. So we would love for you to check it out. We would love for you to gift it to your teachers. That's kind of our dream, really. We both do a lot of continuing education. We both travel and give conferences and things like that. That's actually how we met. Was I was giving a keynote out in Utah, and she came up and introduced herself to me, and then we connected later. And yeah, so that's how we got connected. And so our hope is to do more of these educational things, and our dream really is that we can get this book into every educator's hands, because we are writing it with the heart of helping these kids. And my first book, The Connected Therapist, I get great reviews on there about how helpful it is from people and how it helped them, reframe things and think of them differently. And I think that that's what this book is going to do really, really well, is to help educators see the children through those four tenets and really figure out what is going on and how do we teach them instead of punish them. And so, yeah, I'm so excited for this book, you guys. Like, we've been writing it back and forth. It's not done yet. I'll be honest. It's not done, but it's gonna be. And it's like we're laughing, we're cracking up at our own jokes, we're crying at some of the stories, and I'm real excited to get this in publication. Yeah, maybe.
I'm in the process of setting up ways to contact me outside of, because this is officially not part of my official job. So, um, world, Amy's branching out a little bit, but by the time this airs, I can get contact information to you guys. If you
Perfect.
can just like put it there, and I'll have it there. But in the meantime, that's me.
Okay. Well, you guys, I will add I'll add a link to your book at the end of these show notes. Marty, I'll put your
Just training
contact and Amy
therapies.
when you send me yours.
Yeah.
I'll put that just so that people, if they are interested in, consults and, all the things, we definitely want them to check it out. I will definitely be reading the book myself. I've read The Connected Therapist, and it was very helpful as an OT. So for all you listeners out there, check out the show notes, click the links. And if anything that we said today has made you laugh, cry, or feel seen, please share this episode with a friend. And we will see you guys again next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If anything we said today made you laugh, cry, or feel seen, send this episode to another adopted mom who needs it. And don't forget to follow us at Beyond the Home Study on Instagram.
If you've ever found yourself exhausted, overwhelmed, and wondering, why didn't anyone tell me this part of adoption? Don't worry, you're home now.